Thank you so much, Mr. Amin, for getting us started this evening. And thanks to the administration at Avalon for allowing me to speak on this important topic. I've been passionate about the subject of physician well-being and burnout prevention for about the last 20 years. Part of my interest is that I lost a cousin to suicide. He was a successful dermatologist, and his suicide caught everybody by surprise. So I have spent lots of time trying to find ways to prevent this from happening to others because it is personal to me. However, the talk isn't just going to be for physicians. Most of it will seem very personal for physicians, but it's applicable to any profession. And anyone that's listening this evening, whether you're a student, resident, physician, administration, I hope that you'll get some pearls of wisdom to take home with you to help you be a little bit healthier and to prevent burnout in your own profession. Next slide, please. So an ideal to which physicians and any professional might aspire is to be a whole, complete person characterized by balance. That's balance in your professional life and your private life. You don't, once you let one part take advantage of the other, you're out of balance. So balance, purpose, whatever your purpose is in life, whether it's to become a physician, to be the best at whatever you're doing, be the best at what you're doing, make that purpose continue to be your goal. And to give life meaning, our lives should be about something greater than us, maybe leaving a lasting legacy. So we want to be whole, complete persons characterized by balance, purpose, and meaning. Next slide. People who integrate their personal and professional commitments in a manner that promotes personal well-being and contributes to society in a meaningful way. So that combination of personal well-being and societal or the rest of the world well-being, that balance, once again, is really important. Next slide. So resilience is that capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. It's toughness, the ability of a substance or an object to spring back into shape, elasticity. Allegedly, the more resilient we are, the more able we are to be stretched and come back to normal, the healthier we are and the better we can sustain ourselves during stressful times. People who are resilient, who comprehend and attend to the complex interdependence of body, mind, and spirit. We're not just bodies, we're not just minds. The body, mind, and spirit have to work together to be a whole and healthy person. Next slide. Value in communications. I tell you, it's some of the worst problems in marriages, in relationships, in physician-patient relationships come along when communication doesn't happen correctly. I tell people quite often, I have such a difficult time learning a foreign language because I have enough problems communicating what I really want to say in the language that I was born to. So congratulations to you all out there who can speak different languages and still communicate very well in your different languages. That's a beautiful thing to do. Learning should be happening all of our lives. When we stop learning, we're dying. So this value of communication, learning, teamwork, we'll mention teamwork again and again, cultures of collaboration, working together. We cannot go it alone. Professionalism means that we do our very best, or we are excellent at whatever our profession is. And then accountability. When you say you're going to do something, do it. When you say you're going to show up at a certain time, be there. When Mr. Amin said he was going to start this at 7 o'clock, we started at 7 o'clock. That's accountability. That means you do what you say you're going to do. Next slide. Care people who care for themselves, their families, patients, colleagues, coworkers, caring for ourselves and others. We can't care for others unless we've cared for ourselves. So that's one of the important things that we're going to talk about tonight, the way to care for ourselves so we can care for all those important people in our lives. Next slide. We lead by precept. That's the laws, the morals that we live by, whether they be the laws of the land or the laws of our religion, our morality. Lead by precept and example. When we say we're going to do something, we do it. We don't use that old phrase, do what I tell you to do, but don't do what I do. Don't do what I say, but don't do what I do. No, you have to do what is the very best for yourself and for others, and lead by example. By precept, by example, to assure quality patient care, quality care of others, and to advance our profession, whether it be physician, law, a street cleaner, certainly administration. So lead by precept, example, to assure quality care, to advance our professions. Next slide. So this evening, we're going to talk about 6 major areas, a definition of burnout. It's very straightforward, and hopefully you'll kind of understand a little bit better about what burnout means after we've addressed that. Then we'll look at burnout statistics for physicians, just a few simple statistics that make an important point. Factors that increase the risk of physician burnout will be a little boring. I'll go through 12 factors, maybe add a couple of extra along the way, but these are the major ones that were addressed by a lady named Sarah Berg on May the 28th, 2020. She's a senior news writer for the American Medical Association and put together just a few weeks ago these 12 factors that drive up physician burnout. We're going to look at the importance of wellness. Then we're going to show an example through the Mayo Clinic's Wellbeing Index of a way of measuring our well-being. And there are many of these versions of well-being out there, but the Mayo Clinic Wellbeing Index is one that has been highly successful. Then we're going to spend the last 10-15 minutes or so talking about how we create joy, purpose, and meaning in medicine and in life. So that'll be the fun stuff. You got to trudge through some of this other stuff before we get there. Next slide, Mr. Amin. Definition of burnout. It's that psychological syndrome that emerges as a prolonged response to chronic interpersonal stress on the job, resulting in 3 primary symptoms. So prolonged stress resulting in these 3 primary symptoms. And when we talk about statistics of burnout, certainly if all 3 of these components are present, that's pretty severe burnout. But if any one of these 3 components are present, we say that people show signs of burnout. Emotional exhaustion means that you just cannot get a breath of fresh air. You just cannot feel refreshed. Emotional exhaustion goes beyond physical exhaustion. A good night's sleep won't cure it. You are just in need of help. Depersonalization, where you start to treat people as objects rather than human beings with stories. For a physician saying, I guess I got to take care of the gallbladder in room number 3, rather than, let's go see Ann Smith, who has a gallbladder problem. She's been suffering with this problem for a while. Fortunately, her husband is there. So each person has a story, but when we depersonalize people, that's a serious sign of burnout. And lack of a sense of accomplishment. This is the finest profession in the world. I'm a little bit biased, of course, but being a physician allows us to be heroes, save lives, help bring people to a better place. When people fail to sense the accomplishments that they have the opportunity to do on a daily basis, That's serious because we have so many opportunities to sense those accomplishments. Emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and lack of a sense of accomplishment are the three primary symptoms of burnout. Next slide. Burnout statistics for physicians, of those various symptoms, more than 50% of physicians admit to a symptom of burnout. This has been a constant over the last several years since these statistics have been measured nationwide. Sadly, studies reveal that 30% of physicians would not choose a medical career again, nor would they recommend it to their children. I know many of you in the audience are children of physicians. You were proud, and your parents were proud of the wonderful profession they had chosen. Friends, it is the most important profession in the world, in my biased opinion, and I would be so proud if my children were to choose this wonderful profession. There's the intimacy we're able to share with our patients, the achievements we're able to share. I was just telling one of the students the other day that I loved being a hero. That opportunity to be a hero in my field of obstetrics and gynecology was so phenomenal. And we get that opportunity. You don't have to be an OB-GYN, emergency room, surgery, any of family physician, internal medicine. You're a hero to your patients every day. More than 350 physicians commit suicide each year. That sad statistic has been the case for several years running as well. In fact, I worry this year with the pandemic that it might even be higher. The suicide rate of physicians is almost 2 times higher than the general population, and sadly, it's higher for women physicians than for men. Next slide. Factors that increase the risk of physician burnout. Now, this is going to be a boring few minutes, friends, but I think it makes some good points. First of all, the healthcare industry. The stakeholders involved in the healthcare industry have divergent interests and expectations that complicate efforts to improve the system. Standardization, cost controls, and productivity targets can cause declines in the physician's sense of control, flexibility, and autonomy. These are some of the major reasons why many of us chose medicine. In addition to wanting to help make people's lives better, we like the control, the flexibility, and the autonomy that we have in this field. Laws, regulations, and standards. Healthcare laws and regulations are created by federal, state, and local governments and have led to growing concerns about the burden of administrative requirements on physicians because of the failure to assess the impact of regulations or requirements before they are implemented. Growing administrative requirements interfere with patient care and drain time and morale from physicians. Healthcare reform and payment policies. By managing multiple payment systems with complex rules, processes, metrics, and incentives that may frequently change, is often a source of burden for physicians. As private insurance plans continue to expand the use of risk-sharing contracts, physicians feel even a greater burden. These payment policies and requirements cause substantial administrative burden and other negative effects that cause physicians to leave their practices. Medical record documentation and coding requirements. Electronic health records serve several functions, including the planning and evaluation of a patient's treatment, but federal and state laws and regulations impose specific documentation requirements on physicians and health professionals. Multiple sources of documentation requirements lead to duplicative and inconsistent requirements that are burdensome and time-consuming for physicians. You'll hear that concept of burdensome and time-consuming time and time again. Next slide. Quality measurement and reporting. Documenting and reporting quality measures has led to improved accountability, transparency, and increased value in healthcare. But it is not without burden. There are many performance measures that add to the burdens placed on physicians because They are duplicative and not clinically relevant. Efforts to decrease the burden associated with quality measures are ongoing. Number 6, prescription drug monitoring programs. Authorized prescription drug monitoring programs exist in 49 states, the District of Columbia, and Guam. Physicians can use these to inform their prescribing decisions, avoid polypharmacy, and refrain from supplying opioids to patients exhibiting drug-seeking behavior. However, access to the database varies from state to state and can be burdensome for physicians. Number 7, maintaining privacy and security. Federal and state laws and regulations impose obligations on healthcare organizations and physicians to maintain privacy and security on health information. For example, the goal of the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, that's the act that everyone knows as HIPAA. These standards protect the integrity, confidentiality, and availability of health data. The HIPAA security rule also aims to establish national standards for the protection of electronic health information. However, the steps required to comply adds to the administrative burden. The prior authorization process. Payers often require physicians to obtain prior authorization for medications, other forms of treatment, diagnostic procedures, and referrals. However, these requirements can create hassles for patients and add to physicians' burden. I can't tell you the number of hours that my office staff has spent, and I as well, on the phone trying to get prior authorization. These rules also vary by different payers, which require inconsistent workflow processes and submission of additional information through a manual process. Drives us crazy. Number 9, next slide, professional licensure. Physicians and other health professionals are required to be licensed. Every student out there, when you become a physician, you will be required to obtain licensure. You must also meet certain criteria to maintain your license in addition to completing your residency. And because licensing occurs at the state level, the requirements will vary from state to state. While recent efforts aim to streamline applications, physicians are still asking to answer questions about their physical and mental health status. They're being asked about physical and mental health status, and these can create a barrier to physicians seeking treatment for these treatable illnesses because they may not want to admit that they've got a depression or some kind of physical or psychological health problem. Number 10, maintenance of certification. Requirements for board certification include completion of an accredited residency or fellowship program, maintaining a current and unqualified license to practice, and successfully pass secure examinations of knowledge and of in their specialty. What has added a substantial burden on physicians, though, is meeting maintenance of certification requirements. Sometimes these are done every 5 years, sometimes every 10 years, but because it's typically handled after work, these dig into our private time, and efforts need to be put out there to decrease this added burden of maintaining certification. Number 11, professional liability. Lawsuits are common. These add stress and risk of burnout. Malpractice lawsuits add stressors, and so we're really concerned about helping physicians decrease the liability, and some of the work that the insurance companies have done to help teach physicians how to avoid these lawsuits have been tremendously successful. When I was a med student, we weren't taught about liability issues at all. Today, it's ingrained in our training, and avoiding lawsuits is a lot easier today, but it still adds risk, and especially if you get named in a lawsuit. Finally, the patient-physician relationship, the recent erosion of trust, more computer time, these are taking away from the face time that is so important in physician-patient relationships. We need to protect the sanctity of that relationship. Next slide. Sorry that was such a long ride through those 12 issues. Some of the more interesting ones, and I'll talk about the importance of wellness in a second, but this COVID-19 pandemic, talk about factors that drive up physician burnout. We're seeing tremendous stress for all areas of the healthcare world over this past few months that we weren't prepared for in our training. You who are in your training now are being exposed to it, so hopefully we'll find ways of making a smoother transition if we ever get hit with such a horrible pandemic in the future. There's something called the imposter syndrome. It's especially true in the learning phase, where the imposter syndrome, you feel like an imposter when you're learning about something and you don't feel as qualified as you should be to be taking care of the issue. Be transparent. If you don't know something, say you don't know. Don't feel like an imposter. Compassion fatigue. Seeing the same problem time and time again. The idealism that brought people into medicine in the first place sometimes is strained just with the sheer workload. So protect that compassionate part of yourself. Don't let it get burned out. And the second, victim syndrome, is a title that's come about over the last few years as we realize that not only is the patient a victim of his or her issue, but when something goes wrong, the physician and caregivers become victims also, because we never want a problem to occur in our patients. Second, victim syndrome, compassion fatigue, the imposter syndrome, COVID-19 pandemic are all added factors that drive up physician burnout. The importance of wellness, though, friends, is what we're all about here. We know those factors are out there that drive up burnout, but we must find ways to stay well, and that's what the rest of this talk is going to be about. People cannot and should not take care of others if they cannot take care of themselves. That's true whether you're a physician, a parent, anyone in the workforce who is out there taking care of others. You can't take care of others until you've taken care of yourself. Be healthy. Physician resilience and wellness is not only good for physicians, but it's conducive to healthy organizational culture and essential to quality patient care. And I would say that's true for any profession. Resilience and wellness is conducive to healthy organization culture and essential to the quality in that organization. Simply put, if a hospital or an organization wants healthy patients or clients, they must have healthy physicians in the hospital setting. They must have healthy professionals in the other settings. Next slide, please. The Mayo Clinic Wellbeing Index is a 9-question assessment that takes about 5 minutes to complete. There are many models of testing well-being out there. The Mayo Clinic Wellbeing Index is probably one of the best known. It's used not only with physicians, it's also used with residents, can be used with medical students, pharmacists, and other healthcare workers. They're trying to find ways of using the Mayo Clinic Wellbeing Index for other professions outside of the medical profession. It asks simple questions like, during the past month, have you felt burned out from your work? During the past month, have you worried that your work is hardening you emotionally? During the past month, have you often been bothered by feeling down, depressed, or hopeless? During the past month, have you pardon me just a second. Needed to take a glass of water there for a second. During the past month, have you fallen asleep while sitting inactive in a public place? During the past month, have you felt that all things you had to do were piling up so high that you could not overcome them? Have you been bothered by emotional problems such as feeling anxious, depressed, or irritable? Has your physical health interfered with your ability to do your work at home and or away from home? And then finally, very strongly disagree or strongly agree with, the work I do is meaningful to me, or my work schedule leaves me enough time for my personal and family life, that balance. So it's recommended that this kind of an index be utilized, and then in 6 months or a year, retest your organization and see if there's been improvement. One of my favorite questions in medicine is the triad. Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Or is it staying the same? Whether you got a fever, a person bleeding, a person in distress, a person experiencing burnout, right? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Staying the same? The only way you can know for sure is by examining that person and then re-examining at a given time in the future. The same is true for well-being. Examine, re-examine in the future. Next slide, please. What we want to do is create joy, purpose, and meaning in medicine and in life. I'm going to go through some individual strategies, and then we're going to talk about some organizational strategies. And all of these have the idea that they will be used to help us be more resilient, to have balance, purpose, and meaning in our lives. First, we'll go through the individual strategies. Next slide, please. Begin and or end your day with relaxing music. I don't know about you, but I'm a big fan of music. I don't know how people do the hard rock or the black metal. Some people actually relax listening to that kind of stuff, but I prefer classical music or some kind of relaxing music. But think about it. If it's part of your lifestyle, think about adding it to your life, beginning, end of the day, or sometimes during the day when you need a little relaxation. Our local classical music station has the non-rush hour for people who are out there in the traffic in the rush hour to listen to this non-rush hour music to help them relax. Next slide, please. Minimize screen time, especially at the beginning and end of the day. So many people have their cell phones with them, and it's the last thing they look at before they go to sleep at night, and the first thing they look at when they get up in the morning. Minimizing screen time is so important for our well-being. And I encourage people to, if you're not on call, now as an OB-GYN or in many of the primary care physicians will need to be on call, so you have to have your phone available or whatever device you use to alert you that someone needs you. But when that's not necessary, please leave those devices at a place away from where you'll be sleeping and resting and trying to rejuvenate yourself. Next slide, please. Exercising and staying fit and getting outside when you can to do this. Nature is so healing, and exercising and staying fit gives us not only keeps our bodies in shape, but also when we exercise our bodies, it helps our minds and our spirit, that mind, body, spirit continuum. Next slide, please. Incorporating spiritual practices into your daily life is so important too. There was a poem that said something to the effect that I have so much to do today that I've got to take time to pray. I know that people in the Muslim world, I haven't said this in one of my speeches before, but you pray frequently and well. I can't help but to think that that must not be really relaxing and helpful. It would be good if all of us were to find times throughout the day to pray, to meditate, and or do some mindfulness. And during this time, it's important to take deep breaths. Deep relaxation breathing is important with patients in labor. It's important when at times of stress, when I walk into a labor room where everybody's stressed out, after I've kind of taken the pulse of the situation, the first thing I do is to ask everyone in the room to take a moment and take a nice deep breath, and let's continue with our work. But especially adding that deep breathing to prayer, meditation, and mindfulness, and adding those things regularly and every day. Next slide, please. Healthy, balanced diet. You know, exercise and diet, those simple things have been preached throughout the years, and not too many folks actually pay attention to it. They eat very sporadically, eat comfort foods that may not always be best for them. They skip meals. It's good to have 3 square meals a day, or spaced meals. I've heard it said that you should eat like a king or a queen for breakfast, like a prince or princess for lunch, and like a pauper for supper. But and that's said in order to have, you know, a larger meal at the beginning of the day, and then at the end of the day, you don't want to have too heavy a meal on board. Although that's when people a lot of times have their family time, and it's when it's most convenient to have the larger meal. But try not to go to bed with full stomach, because that is one way of having a more restless night. And so better to space the meals, and having a little lighter meal at the end of the day if possible is always recommended. Next slide, please. Get right, be right with your significant other, family, and friends. It, as we've said a couple of times during the last half hour, we can't do it alone, especially at times of stress. We need to reach out to others. It's been said you shouldn't go to bed angry with your spouse or significant other, but family, friends are just so important to our well-being. Loneliness is almost like another pandemic out there in society, and being in tune with those we love is so important. And I cannot underline the significance of reaching out to family, friends, and others, especially when there's stress, but especially when things are going good too. We need to, and as far as this balance that we talked about earlier, balancing our family life is so important. If we're working all the time and neglect our family, we neglect one of the most important parts of our wellness campaign. Next slide, please. Attend to your fluid intake. Just like we must take those deep breaths as needed, attending to our fluids is really important. I've said this to my patients quite often: water is your friend. You want your circulation working like a clear mountain stream, carrying clean messages to your brain and your heart. You don't want sludge going through there. So drink your water. Remember, water is your friend. We can go without breathing for only about 2 minutes. We can go without water for maybe about 2 days. We can go without food for maybe about 2 weeks. But we should do all of these things: good healthy diet, good healthy water, good healthy breathing. These are life-giving processes, life-giving gifts that we must respect and treat them like they're our friends. Water is your friend. You want your circulation working like a clear mountain stream. You want your brain being fed well with water so it works well. You want your heart and your circulation working well. Next slide, please. Studies have shown that we should give ourselves between 7 and 9 hours of sleep opportunity each night. I read a book about 2 years ago. I have a physician brother. I called him and said, "You got to read this book." He said, "I'm reading the same book." It's by Matthew Walker. It's called Why We Sleep, Unlocking the Power of Sleep and Dreams. The sweet spot with sleep at night is about 8 hours. And I use the phrase sleep opportunity each night because we may not be able to sleep between 7 to 9 hours, but we should at least give ourselves that opportunity to sleep between 7 and 9 hours each night. I don't know why we were created with this need to sleep, but it is so important to our humanity. It is so important to help our immune systems reboot. It is so important to help us fight off diseases. 7 to 9 hours of sleep opportunity each night. Please, even though you may be a person who seems to get along fine with just 4 hours at night, there are very few people who can do that and stay healthy. So please consider the 7 to 9 hours of sleep opportunity each night if you want to have well-being as part of who you are. Next slide, please. Show gratitude early and often. I feel that this is one of the keys to being healthy in an organization. It's one of the keys to having healthy relationships with our friends, our coworkers, our family. When you get up in the morning, show gratitude to God for another day of opportunities. If there's someone who gets up with you in the morning, show gratitude to that person for being in your life. The first person that you meet in the morning, if you don't have a significant other, start out just expressing your gratitude for them being in your life. Next slide, please. Live fully in the now. Every precious moment has the potential of being sacred, filled with joy, purpose, and meaning. When I would go into my office and look at the patient list and see the 20 patients who were scheduled, toward the end of the list, I'd see Carol Masana. I can't wait to see Carol Masana, and I have to endure all these other patients till she arrives. Shame on me. There is joy and purpose and meaning in every opportunity that I have to visit with a patient or anyone that's in my life or anything that's in my life. So the past is history, tomorrow is a mystery. We live in the present. We should make the very most of every precious moment that we're given and find the sacred, find the special in every special moment, and make it the very best moments in your life so that the next moment has the potential of being the same. And don't leave a job undone. Stay there, work with it for as long as it takes to make it special. Now, there's some jobs that you need to spread out for several days or even weeks, but whatever is in front of you, do it the very best you can, live in that moment, and the next moment will be its own precious moment by itself. Next slide, please. Be kind to everyone you meet. There are no exceptions. Even strangers, even people who may have done you wrong. Be kind to everyone you meet. One of the things that we're trying to do at Avalon is make this the kindest medical school in the Caribbean. Maybe the kindest medical school on earth today. But being kind is so important. On TV last week, one of the commentators said that a study had been done that showed that kindness beat out just about any other word as far as expressing the kind of feelings that we should have for others. So kindness is something that you can carry with you and can make such a difference in relationships, but makes such a difference in who you are as a living, breathing, caring person of well-being. Be kind to everyone you meet. Please don't let there be any exceptions. Next slide, please. Never lose your idealism. When I started out in my residency program, I was had finished med school, and I was so happy to be starting my residency, and I was really upbeat. And the nurses said, "Where did that attitude come from?" I said, "I don't know. This is just me." Well, give us a little time. That idealism, that upbeat attitude that you have, we'll see if that still stays the same. And at the end of my 4 years of OB/GYN residency, that same person became a believer that you can maintain your idealism. And through 40 years of OB/GYN practice, hopefully I maintained it there too. And part of what I ask when I speak with physicians about well-being, about the problems they're having, I ask them to remember why they went into this field in the first place. See if you can remember that idealism, that borrow on that compassion, that desire to help others. This is the reason most of us went into medicine in the first place, to help others, to be compassionate to others, to make a difference in people's lives. Never lose your idealism at any stage of your life. Next slide, please. Always be a good citizen of whether it's your family, your community, your country. Being a good citizen just simply means getting to know the people that you're working with, getting to know the people in your family, your community, and obeying the rules, being law-abiding, showing up on time, doing what you're asked, helping others. Being a good citizen means different things to others, from one person to the next, but always be a good citizen will stand you well in your relationships, in your community, and in your country. That means vote in November if you're a U.S. citizen. Vote in your own country. Hopefully you have that opportunity. In your community, just get to know the people in your community and be kind to them. And in your family, be kind and loving and be a leader in your family. Next slide, please. I've been surprised through the years at the number of students who didn't know what the golden rule was. The golden rule is very simply doing unto others as you would have them do unto you. The golden rule is a wonderful way to practice medicine. It's a wonderful way to practice a life. Just about every religion has a form of the golden rule. If we think about the way that we want ourselves treated and treat others the same way, then we are going to make the right decisions about how to care for them. Think about what I would want if I were the patient in this situation instead of the doctor. The golden rule will guide you in the right direction. And shame on any person who, for a physician, for example, if the patient says, so doctor, you've recommended this for me. Is this what you would recommend for your family? Shame on you if you would change your mind when the patient says, what would you do for your own family? And you say, well, let me think about that for a second. They shouldn't have a moment of hesitation. What they recommended for their patient should be exactly what they would recommend for their own family. Live by the golden rule. Take care of others the way you would want yourself or your family cared for. Next slide, please. So we talked about a lot of the individual ways of taking care of ourselves, but we don't live in this world alone. Organizations are there to help us. Healthy organizations have healthy people working in them, and for well-being to be done right in an organization, in a hospital, we have to have healthy individuals and a healthy organization working together to create joy, purpose, and meaning in medicine and in life. Next slide, please. We want to choose a workplace, a school, or hospital where our health and values can flourish. One that has this similar values to your own. A place that values integrity, values honesty, values excellence, values mind, body, and spirit care. Choose a workplace, a school, a hospital where your health and your values can flourish. Next slide, please. The mission of the workplace, school, or hospital should lead decision-making. Our executive dean, Dr. Arja, has often reminded us to look at our mission and see if our mission is being followed through with the decisions that we're making. Avalon has a wonderful mission statement: to prepare competent physicians who can serve communities locally and around the world. I take great pride in the fact that we're preparing physicians who can serve communities locally and around the world. Avalon graduates are committed to patient safety and public health while maintaining the highest standards of professionalism and ethical behavior required for medical practice. That mission leads our Avalon University community and starts from the very top with Dr. Arja, Dr. Fateh, Dr. Samir. We look back at that mission when we're making our decisions on an administrative level. We look back at that mission when we make decisions about the students, and the students should feel good about the fact that they're going to a university where the mission of the university, so well stated, leads the decision making at our university and throughout our entire community. Next slide, please. Develop cultures of collaboration. We cannot, should not do it alone, as I've said a couple of times before. I love this concept of culture of collaboration, friends. Collaboration is so important to getting things done right, getting things done well, getting things done in a healthy manner. I first heard this concept, culture of collaboration, about 10 years ago in one of the organizations that I am a member of, getting access to healthcare for those who can't get access to healthcare for themselves, bringing hospitals, our health departments, free clinics, other organizations together with cultures of collaboration. We're able to provide healthcare for those most in need, but cultures of collaboration should exist in your workplace, in your family, collaborating together, having that mindset that this is the way we do things together. That communication that we talked about earlier, is so important in developing cultures of healthy cultures of collaboration. Next slide, please. So wellness cannot be assumed in an organization. It must be cultivated. I grew up on a farm. I like that idea of cultivating the crops, cultivating wellness throughout an organization, establishing and supporting a culture of caring, a place where kindness is really important, building and maintaining cultures of gratitude. As we said earlier, don't miss an opportunity to show gratitude early and often. Celebrate all wins. One of the things that Mr. Amin has helped us do is share the many wins of awesome Avalon University School of Medicine throughout our community when we have residents who or students who get matched late when our students go out and tell the stories of some of their work, some of the work they're doing with the COVID pandemic. We like to celebrate those kinds of things. When our teachers have gone through extra training to get special awards, like Dr. Arja, Dr. Bala has recently, we like to celebrate all of these wins. And in fact, if you have any wins that you want us to share with the rest of the community, we'd love to do that. But it doesn't have to be the big wins like I've described, celebrating birthdays, celebrating passing a test, celebrate whenever you can. Wins are important in our lives. And providing resources for those who need extra attention, counseling, or mentoring. We have those available for our students and have that available throughout our organization. So these resources, I'm proud to say, are available for us. And that's, we can't be well and happy all of the time. Sometimes stresses come into our life, whether it's the loss of a loved one, maybe doing poorly on a test after working so hard to thinking that you were going to ace that test. So there are a variety of times when we need extra attention, counseling, or mentoring. Please take advantage of those resources available here at our university community. Next slide, please. Improve workflow efficiency and maximize the power of team-based care in learning. One of the things that we've found throughout the physician world is that we can do a lot for personal well-being, but if we've got a computer system that is outdated and requires so many different hoops to jump through in order to make it work, we need to have the organization make our workflow more efficient so that we maximize the power of the team. I think Dr. Bala did a study this past year that showed the advantage of team-based learning. One of the students that I spoke with earlier this week talked about a USMLE 1 club that she helped put together to help her fellow students pass the USMLE. And she did a phenomenal job with her own USMLE. She's now one of our senior students. But those kinds of team-based learning are so important. Find ways of getting together and not doing it alone. Next slide, please. Surveys of satisfaction and engagement should be performed at least yearly. I would like to see us do this here at Avalon somewhere along the way. It's not too many medical schools do this yet. They do it in most residency programs, do it in many hospitals. So as I said earlier in this talk, that triple question, is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Is it staying the same? That works so well for us at the bedside, but it works well at an organization level too. Is our satisfaction improving? We have several measures of how we're improving, but this might be an area to consider as well. Next slide, please. Transparency and trust are evident throughout the organization. That certainly exists here at Avalon. And one of the reasons why we're one of the kindest medical schools in the Caribbean, if not one of the kindest medical schools in the world, if not the kindest, because we trust one another. We are open and honest about whatever we are talking about. So please consider the importance of transparency and trust. I read a book a few years ago called The Speed of Trust. When people trust one another, things happen quickly and they happen well. Know the value of and the power of trust. It's right up there with the value and power of kindness. Next slide, please. Consider finding ways to improve social bonds at all levels of the organization. Studies have found that having a variety of social relationships may help reduce stress and heart-related risks. Strong social bonds are even related to a longer life. On the other hand, loneliness and social isolation, I said that loneliness is in epidemic proportions out there too. Loneliness and social isolation are linked to poorer health, depression, and increased risks of early death. Consider finding ways to improve social bonds at all levels of the organization. The social bonds that you do have, keep them strong, and know that that your organization, Avalon University School of Medicine, is here for you, wanting to help you be as healthy as you can. And I hope that through this little presentation over the last hour, I hope I didn't bore you too much. I sometimes get a little distracted with my little stories, but I hope that at least you've gained one or two insights that will help you lead a healthier life, because we want everyone in our community to be the very best that they can be, the very healthiest they can be. Thank you for listening this evening. I think we've pulled it in about an hour, Mr. Amin, and so we'll spend the next 15 minutes if there are any questions out there.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Wilson. It was really very great session. I thoroughly enjoyed it. We have a couple of questions, Dr. Wilson. That one of the questions student is asking is about that if they can get this presentation in any form, like as a PPT or PDF.
Sure can. We have it, and I'm happy to share it. So I think that you have a copy of it, don't you, Mr. Amin?
I do. I just uploaded that copy as we speak on our handout section. So if somebody wants to download it, they can download it from the handout section.
They sure can. The material that I presented came from a variety of sources, but there's nothing here that's copyrighted. There's nothing here that's that can't be shared, and I would love it if anyone out there in the audience would like to read it again and absorb some of the suggestions that we made. It would be a pleasure.
Sure, we'll wait for a few more people to ask the question.
No problem. This isn't exactly like Dr. Ghani's talk last week where he was doing some how-tos. Mine are mostly, they seem fairly practical, but if people will attend to these things that we were talking about, the sleep, the water, the deep breathing, not living in isolation, they can make a difference in our lives.
Absolutely.
Hey, I'm fine if there's only one question, but if there's others, we've set aside an extra 15 minutes, so we can wait for that 15 minutes, or at least the next few minutes. No problem.
Sure, we'll wait for next few minutes.
Sure.
Yeah, one student just shared that her birthday is tomorrow. We wished her happy birthday for tomorrow.
Yeah. So how did you do that? Does the university wish our students happy birthday on a regular basis? Or you just
No,
wish?
she just shared. She just shared
She
her
shared that?
profile.
Okay. What's her
We
name?
just got Mariam
Miriam?
Fada.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Miriam. Happy birthday to you. It's nice that she
Um,
shared that with us.
Absolutely, yes, she must be happy. We just got one new question. Excellent presentation. Can we have our student get involved into writing an article with you on this topic?
Ah, it'd be an honor. You can is my email address is pretty easy to find, isn't it? It's
Yes,
very,
absolutely.
okay,
Your
good.
email address is on the school's administration
Okay,
page on the website.
perfect. Yes, if the student would like to contact me about the details, I think there is so much that can be uh, discovered about this topic. It wasn't discussed at all up until about the last maybe 10, 15 years, but over the last couple of years, it has exploded in its importance. Most hospitals now they have what's called the C-suite. That means where the C's or chiefs are, the chief executive officer, the chief operating officer, the chief medical officer, the chief nursing officer. Now they have a chief wellness officer in many hospitals. So it's really an important area of medicine. Hospital systems know that you can't have healthy patients if you don't have healthy caregivers taking care of them. I'd love to talk about that.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. We have received like some more questions. They sounds to me like some personal question. Maybe you would like to give them answer privately, so I can
Okay,
compile this email question list to you and send it to you with their email address, so you can just reply
sure,
them.
sure. That's totally understandable. It'd be my pleasure.
Sure. One question just we got. With the
Yeah,
increased use of the telemedicine, will the doctor-patient relationship remain the same?
with the increased use of, what was that?
With the increased use of telemedicine,
Oh,
will the
telemedicine,
doctor,
sure.
yes,
Yeah.
will the
Now that's
doctor-patient relationship remain the same?
boy, that is such a good question because I was talking to a psychiatrist about 2 weeks ago, and she said that before the pandemic, this psychiatrist was doing about 5 to 10% telemedicine. During the pandemic, she's doing 100% telemedicine. And I said, you think it'll ever go back to the 5 to 10% again? And she said, I can't imagine that it will once people have discovered the convenience. But, the physician-patient relationship is so important. And I think it's gotten beaten up by physicians, as I listed those 12 items where physicians are using computers more, where there's extra documentation needed, and sometimes physicians have their backs turned to the patients while they're documenting on their computers. So the physician-patient relationship has been beaten up a little bit in modern times, and telemedicine has the potential of doing that as well. Um, there's, I would hate to see telemedicine only done by phone. There's something about that eye contact that's really important, but that there's something almost spiritual about being in the same room with someone and seeing not just their eyes, but their body movement. Um, and I'm making a short question kind of long here since I got a couple of extra minutes, but I've been on many mission trips, and sometimes the lines would be so long with these mission trips that we would have our triage team find ways of seeing if some of these patients were just coming for some of the free gifts that we gave instead of seeing the doctor. And that didn't work out well at all. The patients were very angry that we thought that they were just there to get the free pharmaceuticals or whatever we brought. They wanted to be touched by the doctor. There's something about that personal touch that is so important. And telemedicine, despite the fact that you can hear the words and see the facial expressions, we need to have that touch. So I can see how telemedicine could be used kind of a hybrid in addition to those in-person visits. But it would be very sad to me if the physician-patient relationship became a telemedicine physician-patient relationship rather than the physician-patient relationship that occurs with that visit. We'll never go back to a time when telemedicine won't be used. I think in psychiatry it's been used for decades. In radiology, teleradiology for about maybe 15, 20 years, but it's being used in an incredible amount lately. And so if we use that by itself, it would definitely erode the physician-patient relationship as we know it.
Okay, one very nice question we just received, Dr. Wilson. One student is saying that very informative presentation, Dr. Wilson. Thank you. I am wondering how, as a physician, do you prevent yourself from getting emotionally overwhelmed by patient cases and conditions, especially if the outcomes are not that positive?
Yeah, that is a good question, and thank you for the compliment, by the way. That's one of the things that we learn as you go through medical school and residency training, that you must, that we're only human, and when doctors make the patients think, or they think themselves, that they can cure every illness that comes before them, that's unrealistic. So I often said that if I can take care of something, then I should. If I can't, I should refer the patient to a place, whether it's an oncologist, a surgeon, a specialist who can take care of the problem. But we have to, as we go through our training, we know our limitations, and we know what we can do well. And by the time you finish your training, you want to be the very best in whatever you do, and give your patient the very best. And you have to be satisfied with that. We know that we can't cure all illnesses, and we have to be transparent and honest with our patients that we may not be able to cure them, but we will care for them the very best that we can. And so I'm a religious person, and I believe that that as a human being, I can only do so much. So I partner with God or Allah in my care, and knowing that I'm a partner with a higher power, and wherever it's appropriate, I share that with patients. Sometimes it's even appropriate to pray with patients, but you have to get their permission for that. But understanding that we're only human, and being willing to accept our human limitations is very important. And there are times when I must admit that I have become emotional, but I try to spare those emotions for trusted friends. There's something about being with a patient that requires that I bring my very best and my very strongest. But being honest with a patient and knowing that we're only human and asking God or Allah to be our partner in the room helps give us that extra reassurance that we're doing everything we can. I hope that helps a little bit.
That's a very great answer, Dr. Wilson. I hope that helps to the student. I think that ends the list of our all general question, and the remaining question I will be compiling and send it to you so you can reach out to the student.
That's great. Thank you so much, Mr. Amin. You've been a great partner this evening. I really appreciate your help.
I also enjoyed your company and the presentation thoroughly. Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for everybody being out there tonight. Good night.